Thanks for coming along today. This is a short 20-minute session called Analyzing Azure Monitor Log Data in Azure Data Studio with Tayob Ali, who's our remote presenter today. I'll hand you over to him. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Those who are joining, in person in London, and also those of you who are joining remotely. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. So I'm not going to read the abstract. I'm sure you read the abstract, you liked it, and that's why you are here. But before I start, I want to thank the organizers. It's not easy to organize an event like this with 300 plus sessions, speakers from all around the world, and in a hybrid mode, right? So kudos to them, well organized. And also thanks to the sponsors. I think without their help, it is not possible to bring this kind of conference to the community all across the world. So I'll urge you, if you need a product that one of these sponsors have, please review them first before you go to the other vendors. So before I get to the demos, because I do not have any slide, I just want to talk about a few things. The title of this talk said Azure Monitor Log Data, right? So once you set up logging or diagnostics for any Azure resource, I know our talk is geared to Azure SQL databases, but this is pretty much for any resources in cloud, in Azure. If you want to get event log, diagnostics logs, you save those, or once you set this up, they stream to a log analytics workspace, which Microsoft now call Azure Monitor Logs. If you want to read that data directly, then you need to use a language called Custo Query. So initially, this language was internally used by Microsoft because Microsoft has this huge data centers all over the world. So they needed to monitor their data centers, all their resources, and plus Microsoft has a lot of hosted solutions. They need to monitor all those, like Xbox is one of those. And Microsoft used this because this data, what they did is they are all compressed, they're all indexed. So Custo Query language users can only read this data. You cannot modify their data once it's ingested into those workspace. And also Microsoft actually has a built-in service called Azure Data Explorer that if some of you are using it, then you can use this Custo Query language and everything else that I'm going to show you to mine that data from Azure Data Explorer. Now, this is also used for application insight, and like I said, for any other Azure resources. To set up this demo, I used 3 files. These are already on my GitHub, and I send a link of my GitHub repo to the organizer, so you should be able to download. I'm not going to show this because in the interest of time, I put enough comment that you should be able to set this up. And then we'll talk about these 3 files. Now, the tool that you see I'm using is called Azure Data Studio. This is a very lightweight tool, multi-platform, and this is extension-based. What do I mean by extension-based? This is a very lightweight tool. If you need a feature to add to this tool, you can enable an extension. And once you're done, you can disable it or you can uninstall it. And we'll look at some of those. But before we go there, I want to show you in Portal what I did and how you set up initially. So we have a resource group. A resource group is just a container. It's just even at your work, you should use resource group. The advantage of a resource group is once I'm done with this demo, I can go and delete my resource group. And once I delete a resource group, it deletes everything contained in that resource group. So it's easy to manage. Now within my resource group, I have a Azure SQL Server, I have Azure SQL Database, and I have this log analytics workspace, which in some documentation might refer to as the Azure Log Monitor. So if I go to my server, you'll see that I turned on auditing. And my audit data is going to this log analytics workspace that I set up. And if I go to my database, auditing you can set up at a server level. You do not have to set it up for every database then. And for my database, I did set up a diagnostics. This is part database. And if I go to the edit setting, I can show you. This is also going to that log analytics workspace. And because it's a demo, I did turn on everything. You probably want to be a little bit more picky what you choose, because this is going to cost you money. The more data you ingest, the more you pay. So now this is the log analytics workspace in the portal. You can just, without doing what I'm going to show you, you can come here and you can write your queries, right? In plain Kusto query language. Just to give you an example, I can do this, and I'm looking for deadlocks in last 1 day, and I see that I have a deadlock. I did run this demo code beforehand. Now I'm speaking in a very loose term because this conference is mostly for the data platform people. So in a very loose term, this is, you can consider as a database. These are your tables. Within your tables, you will see all your columns, and your data type is string int and all that. Now, once you ingest this data, you can also set up alerting. And I know we do not have time to go into details, but I did put enough code that you should be able to set this up. So I did set up one single alert, and it did fire a few times because I was finalizing my demo. I was making sure everything works before I come online. So I gave it a name, found deadlock alert. And in that, I have a piece of code which is called, I have a condition. It's saying if I have a deadlock and the count is more than 1, then fire this alert. Now, and check this every 30 minutes. Now, are you going to do the same? Depends on your environment, right? If you have a mission critical that you want to know for every deadlock, do this, but that's not the point. So this is mostly in general, you will use this if you just want to use the portal. But sometimes that's not enough, right? If you have hundreds and thousands of resources in Azure, and you want to go get a little bit more insight and find out, where things are not running the way you want, you probably need to do a little bit more. And that's where, all these 3 things that I talked about will come into existence or come into play. So the 3 things, and I'm using a notebook. If you do not know what's a notebook, I'm sure there are session set SQL bits you want to look up, or also there are enough resources with Microsoft documentation, and in YouTube, there's a bunch of videos. Also in Anna Hoffman's YouTube channel, there are a bunch of talks about notebook. The advantage of notebook is I can write my comments, I can write my code, I can run my code, I can save this with my result set, and I can save it or share it with my team or send it to somebody else to look at it. And this is getting more and more popular. Even the Tiger team, they are putting all their scripts in notebooks. People are using it more for, for troubleshooting. So initially, to read the logs or the diagnostics, Microsoft actually had this KQL magic. This is not extension, but you still have to install it. It is still use a Python kernel. And in Azure Data Studio, depending on what you are doing, what language you are using, you have to choose the right kernel. In this case, I'm using a Python kernel, and this can be an advantage. If you are familiar with Python, now what you can do, you can mix and match Python and KQL, and you can have very rich, query written, and using the Python algorithms, you can find out your anomalies, you can find out your baseline. So the first thing you do is you reload your KQL magic. I did this before just to save time. And now if I go to the portal, and if I go to my log analytics workspace, you go to overview, you grab this workspace ID. And once you type this ID here, you can give it alias. Then you can directly connect to it. Now, without going to the portal, I'm connected to my log analytics workspace directly, and now I can query that. But because this is a Python kernel, natively it only understands Python. It doesn't understand your push to query language. You have to tell it that, hey, I'm using KQL. But again, you can combine KQL and Python together. So let's run this. No, kernel is dead. I did not expect this because okay, I'm not going to. Okay, maybe I just need to load again. Hopefully we can get going. I wanted to save time and I ran everything beforehand. Okay, good. So it's loaded. Let's connect to that. Awesome. Okay, so now as you can see, I'm connected to my log analytics workspace and I can run this here. And I'm not going to run everything else below this. I'll let you play with this because I will share this code. So this was good, right? But we are still using Python kernel. I always have to use %%. I have to load the kernel every time, the KQL magic. So, you know, this was not ideal if I did not want to use Python, right? If I want to use KQL natively. So the next one that Microsoft came up with the extension. So I talked about extension a few times. I haven't shown you. So in Azure Data Studio, if you click this, it takes you to the extension pane. And now if I type here, I should be able to see my KQL extension as it's enabled globally. This is written by Microsoft, and extensions are also written by third party like Redgate, SolarWinds, and also individual people contributed to extensions. So you can download those, but be careful with third-party ones before you use those for production. So I enabled it globally. Now, once I enable this, what I can do, let's take this out. I can natively now connect to a Azure Data Explorer. Like I can connect to my local instance of SQL Server. I can do the same with a Data Explorer workspace. And these are kind of, you know, I'm loosely speaking database. These are your functions and tables. Now, if I come here, I could go to Storm Events. I can right click like we can do in SSMS or in Azure Data Studio for SQL Server. And I can say, give me the top 10, right? Natively without doing anything else. And if I want to write a little bit more, I can put some where clause and I can order by, I can do this natively. Now, one thing I didn't tell you so far, another advantage of using Azure Data Studio and Notebook and some of these extensions, it has very rich visualization. What I can do here now without, you know, just click this one button, I can create a graph and I can now share this with anyone in my team and there's also another extension called Sundance. You might want to look at that. That has, you know, richer visualization. So that's the advantage of KQL extension. And you can take it further. Now I'm connecting to Azure Data Explorer, but I'm not connecting to my log analytics workspace. You can do that. You can bring that ID that I showed you from your subscription and the name of your workspace, and you can query this directly. This is a little bit cumbersome. As you can see, I cannot just connect this one time and reuse that connection. I have to put this long URL and construct this for every query. So this was not practical, right? I mean, this is really not very nice. But I still put some examples that you want to, if you want to use it, you can take a look. So the nice one, or the last one that Microsoft came out, is called Azure Monitor Logs extension. So again, if you go to the extensions, as you can see here, it's written by Microsoft, it's still in preview. I did enable it globally. So what this gave us is now we have a new kernel called Log Analytics. And I can directly connect to my log analytics workspace with the ID, right? I do not have to use any URL. I do not have to use KQL magic. Once I'm done with it, and I wrote this enough, you know, this was written by Julie from Microsoft, and I did get in touch with her. I'm using her notebook. I modified it a little bit for this talk. Now you see, without doing anything, I can directly query my Azure Log Analytics workspace. I did some stress test and some workload last night to get some data. That's why you are seeing, so much of data there. So we looked at deadlock, right? So let's look at this from here. Yeah, we can see the deadlock here. And if I want to see a little bit more details about these deadlocks, I can see that I have more deadlocks because I've been, testing with this. And I can find the query hash for those deadlocks that occurred. I can look at errors. Now, once when I was running the deadlock demo code, one thing I did at the end, I dropped the tables, right? And you can use this just to give an example. If someone dropped a table by mistake or during a release, and if you have auditing and diagnostics turned on, you can go back and see what time, what program, and I'm not getting all the columns. You can add more columns and you can see what statements did this. So it's pretty powerful. So again, as I said, I shared all this. I put some references here if you want to read more about this. And if you want to read more about the extensions, you can go and do that. I know it's a short talk. Hopefully it was useful. I would highly encourage you to go to this link, or you can scan this. I'm going to leave this here for a few seconds. Give us feedback. I'm sure organizers, volunteers, and even speakers like me, we are always looking to improve. And if all of you give constructive feedback, I'm sure you will have a better experience when you come back for SQL Beats 2023. Also, the organizers are putting all of you into a raffle. I think there are cool prizes. They're also planting a lot of trees. I think per 10 feedback, they're going to plant 1 tree. All good cause. So, take a minute or two to give feedback. And, if it's bad, it's bad. But, don't just say you didn't like it. Tell me why you didn't like it, or tell the organizers so we all can improve next year. I know this was short, fast speed. So I'll leave my contact, and I think we still have 2 minutes. So if any questions, comments from the room or from the remote attendees, I'll take those. And you can contact me if you want to know more details. I have a whole talk about just on Kusto query language, how you can get it started. I can send you some resources on that path.
Hi, Tab. Thank you for that. We don't have any questions online at the moment, but in the room, has anybody got any comments, anything any questions they want to ask Tab while we're here? We've got a minute now. Okay, great. Thanks for your time, Tab. Thank you for coming and sharing that with us. Loving that. Thanks very much. And we're done. Thank you. Please go back in.
Thank you for hosting, and thank you all those who attended. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so where do we go next? There's a little bit of a break. Go and see the awesome sponsors, pop down the community zone, go and say hi to some people, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.